Hi everyone, this is the SIG Cluster Lifecycle meeting on Wednesday the 23rd August, and today we're going to talk about kubeadm upgrades, self-hosting, and overall 1.8 stabilization and implementation. And yeah, let's start. We have some items on the main tracker for kubeadm is in Kubernetes kubeadm issues with the 1.8 milestone. Let me see if I can find the link to that one. So we can see I've tried to actually keep that up to date. And currently it says 23 open issues and 29 closed. And we have some of them are for some of them has to be fixed before the code freeze, but some of them are optional that might slip or are non-critical, and some of them are critical to the release. We'll go through the ones that must make the release and related items. And we have, let me see, self-hosting. Tim seems to be out today on another meeting. Yeah, so we have two PRs for self-hosting. One is from Diego from CoreOS, really nice PR with surging rolling update strategy for daemon sets, which means they will a new pod will be added before the old one is killed, which is required for self-hosting upgrades. And we have Tim's PR with checkpointing, pod checkpointing explicitly. Let me see if I can find that link as well. As always, it would be very nice of the people here to review these PRs as they come, and we can get that in sooner. Yeah, so the first item to discuss here is, should we, as a starter for the next meeting on Tuesday, should we enable self-hosting by default or not in 1.8? And there are many sides of this kind of problem that we have to take into account. Luke and I discussed this earlier today. Luke, would you mind providing a short recap of what we said?
Sorry, were you talking to me?
Yeah.
Sorry, I was making a sandwich. Yeah, so I was listening though, and yeah, so the self-hosting by default is an interesting one. The question for me is really how confident we feel in self-hosted upgrades at this stage. I haven't seen it working yet because the code isn't finished yet, and there's likely to be edge cases. I would feel comfortable with having it behind a feature flag, a feature gate, and promoting widely in a blog post, for example, and in the release notes and in the documentation that we want people to try it, and that we plan to make it the default in 1.9. But to not quite go as far as making it the default in 1.8 yet, given that it's going to be kind of last minute that it goes in, and Also based on the previous history of kubeadm releases. I'm just saying what you told me earlier now. Basically the previous history of kubeadm releases, we could do with a stable one, basically. So
yeah, so basically, I mean, Kubernetes isn't maybe well known for having the like not breaking uses sometimes. So 1.8 is targeted like from a SIG PM perspective to be a stabilization release. So I think personally it may make sense to keep it in like everything working. We have all the required pieces, but not graduate, not use it by default in 1.8. Actually, we don't need it. So to say, strictly in 1.8, we'll need it for sure in 1.9 if / when we're targeting AJ with like still kubeadm init flow. So then it really makes sense to do that by default, but then again have AJ behind the feature flag to promote the next release. And so that's that's a way I would be comfortable with. I mean, I've tested self-hosting pretty extensively, but still it's something that's very new to our users. Still, I mean, it doesn't look and feel the same, and we didn't announce deprecation of the default static pod manifest. We didn't announce that in 1.7 that, well, be prepared that when you upgrade to 1.8, this will happen. Also, one thing to keep in mind is that we can only enable self-hosting by the default, but upgraded clusters would still use static pod hosting, as there's no way to, well, there's a hacky way, yes, but no easy or no good way to upgrade a static pod cluster from 1.8 to 1.7 to 1.8, as we don't have this daemon set strategy. So yeah, that's basically a recap of the current state. And yeah, what do you think?
No matter, so whether we change a default or not, we're still supporting static pod manifests and self-hosting in 1.8.
Yeah.
Do you think long term we will not support static pod manifests?
No, I think that's pretty much part of the contract with beta, and like I don't see the reason to remove static pod manifest support, as we're going to use it in any case, right? Where for every new cluster, we're first going to do static pods, then just like upgrade to self-hosting. So it makes sense to me to just let users opt out of that transformation.
And a slightly different question might be, would we ever try and support static pod upgrades on HA scenarios?
I don't think so. or maybe manually. Like if you go and whatever, I don't know. If you go on every master and do kubeadm upgrade at the same time or something, have some tooling around, I don't know. It feels wacky. So we don't support it officially, at least, I think.
I think this is where like CM tooling can come into play, and should probably come into play because we punt on those static manifest pods especially for etcd, right?
Yeah, we did. So hang on.
Yeah, we can just, I mean, we can document, I don't know that we need to document, but it's totally possible to upgrade a cluster manually, swap out the manifests and restart the whole thing, right? It's not that it's hard, it's just hard to automate in a generic way.
Well, you could do rolling updates in Ansible, in the proper fashion. So you only go down by one. You got quorum.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like if you have a tool like Ansible in your environment, you could script this upgrade, but it's hard to do it. It's hard to support kubeadm upgrade command upstream to work with static pod manifests in HA.
It gets really weird too, because you have to be very careful. Like if somebody does some scriptery around it, like, oh, I'll PDSH, I'll do it all at once, like kaboom. It's the opposite effect you're going to want to have. So
yeah, so I think, yeah, I don't know at which point you joined, Tim. How should I just do a 1 minute recap or something of what we said?
Sure.
So basically, the first main discussion item, which we're gonna bring up next real SIG meeting as well, is should we support static self-hosting? Should we enable self-hosting by default in 1.8? And I'm a little bit hesitant to doing it actually after thinking about it some time, as for a number of reasons. So we actually don't need self-hosting in 1.8. We thought that it would be the only way to upgrade like smoothly from 1.7 to 1.8, but then we came to think about like we don't have the necessary upgrade strategy in 1.7, so we'd have to do it a hacky way or the static pod manifest way. And I've in my kubeadm upgrade command, I've automated the static pod upgrade, and it's like 100 lines of code or something. Pretty straightforward, just like write whatever manifests to a temporary directory, wherever that is, and then just swap out one by one. If something doesn't come up clean, it'll roll back everything to the earlier state.
So you're doing it piecemeal and verifying that it's up before you finish, right?
Yeah, so for every component, just like check that things are up and running as they should before continuing. So
and that also kind of supports resuming in the middle of a failed upgrade, right?
Yeah,
because all the earlier steps are just idempotent. I think that's a really cool property.
Yeah, I mean, we have this edge case scenario where we reboot in the middle. Like, say we've upgraded the API server, we reboot, and it, of course, like exits. So then when it comes back up, it will then say that, oh, you already have a 1.8 API server. You can't upgrade to 1.8, but you can just force that through, and then it will, well, deploy exactly the same command for the same manifest file for the API server, verify it's working, then proceed with the other ones. And yeah, I mean, so that's like reason number one. We don't explicitly need it. I think, and also as that's the only way kind of to upgrade from 1.7 to 1.8 is doing this static pod thing. I don't want us to have a situation where we have half the clusters are static pod hosted and half the clusters are self-hosted in 1.8. So if we have enabled self-hosting by default, all new clusters would obviously be self-hosted, and all upgraded clusters would be static pod. And also the stabilization team of 1.8 is also like just comment or something that we might want to respect that as well, and go for self-hosting in 1.9, along with, like as Luke said, where we could do some proper marketing here as well, and actually announce the like, wow, now we have self-hosting by default. Now we have self-hosting as an option, and you can test it out in 1.8, and it's working everything's like checkpointing with pod checkpointing is there for bootstrapping. The right manifests are there. You can do a self-hosted cluster in 1.8, and it will work just fine. And it's at beta level, but we just don't have it as a default. But PSA that will change in 1.9, and we'll do static self-hosted by default there. So I don't know, is that reasonable to you?
It seems completely reasonable to me. I'm always a cautionary person when it comes to upgrades and defaults for things that we know that work, because there is always going to be something that we're not going to expect. It seems reasonable to have it option enabled and called out explicitly in the main documentation as a potential, this will save you time in the future type of thing.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best way to get exposure to users running it, trying it, without forcing it on everyone, which is what we want, because we want users trying it and giving us feedback and finding new ways to break it so that we can make it good enough, so that we can get confident enough in it to actually turn it on by default in 1.9.
I love that idea for everything.
Yeah.
Like that pattern makes a lot of sense, right? Because people who want the feature, who understand it, will try it. And there's enough people right now using kubeadm. There's a lot of people using it. That we will get those folks who will feed back into the loop. So.
Yeah, that sounds good. So I guess I'm interested in, does anyone on the call have a dissenting opinion? Does anyone on the call think that we should enable it by default in 1.8? Self-hosting, that is. I don't feel I don't want to put people on the spot.
I do think we need to call it out to the broader meeting, though, like you mentioned, Lucas.
Yeah. That's cool. I think Lucas is away next week, but I'll be there. So I'll put that on the agenda. Yeah, I also think that we need to call out the availability of it in the release notes and in the documentation, and maybe write a blog post to take and do a demo at the community meeting and stuff like that, to get eyeballs on it and testers in the 1.8 timeframe. Well, in the 1.9 timeframe. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. And this meeting is also recorded, so we can link to that in the where we state or document this decision later.
Cool.
So that was the first one.
I wasn't around yesterday, but I did want to PSA that the checkpoint PR is up. I'm waiting on SIG Node to give me feedback. I verified that it behaves the way I want it to behave for the very simple use case that we care about. But I'm still waiting for feedback from them. The kubelet code is a wonderkind of how it operates. So there might be gotchas in how I did things. So I'm just waiting for feedback from Yuju. I'm poking her every day, so she might get fed up with me pretty soon. I don't know.
Cool.
Cool. Then we have that captured. So basically, when it starts up again, it will notice that, I ran an API server, and it will actually think, in the code, it will think that I received this from the API server, right?
Yeah, so on the initialization routine, it reads the checkpoint directory, and it loads all the pods that were written to disk. And provided those pods don't have anything special, which none of the ones that we do, it should not try to contact the API server. So that's the one thing where I want to make sure I have validation on, is there's literally I don't even know, screens and screens of logs that go through that I'm gonna have to verify again, to double check that inside of the kubelet initialization routine, even when you're disconnected from the API server, and it looks like it came from the API server, that it doesn't try to contact the API server, because it shouldn't, so long as you don't have a config map or a secret or anything else that doesn't pertain directly to the host.
So one thing I'm interested in, do we have any validation of the, like, this pod can be checkpointed before we write it to disk? Or should we have validation like on load when I'm reading the directory that, well, this can't be checkpointed as, I mean, I won't load this thing as it has a config map in the initial version.
It's naive. So it's dealer's choice. If you decide to blow off your own foot, then you blow off your own foot. Because it's alpha grade. So I think at that, I don't know exactly what line we want to demarcate things at. We might do config maps soonish, right? And if that's enabled, then we'll write those to disk too. And it's not really hard to do. The scheme for loading and configuring is really brute, stupid, simple. This is not rocket science, so I don't know why people were hemming and hawing at all of the finagly issues. I understand the issues with secrets, but I even think you could feature gate that. And if somebody decided they wanted to do that, I don't see why we would prevent them from doing it, because it would be a default off option on thing. So I think some people are being a little bit pedantic about ideas. I think it's provided we have options for people to do crazy things, I don't think there should be anything preventing them from doing crazy things if they really want to do it. That's what every good cluster management system does, right? You should see the number of knobs in other systems. It's crazy. Like there's literally a joke in Condor, a T-shirt that we made. It says Condor. There's a knob for that.
Aaron, does this all sound good to you for the moment?
I actually have had kind of one passive ear listening, so I'm a little bit behind on the discussion. Sorry.
Did you see the PR?
For
pod checkpointing.
I did a skim of it, but I haven't gone back to it quite yet. When I looked at it, it was a few days ago, and there was like some stuff like when you're saving the pod, it was like saving it verbatim still, but there's still some like massaging that you probably have to do to the pods themselves, like clearing owner references and resetting the status and stuff like that. Has that been taken into account?
Those bits are actually re-updated as part of initialization. So I don't know whether or not we want to do any cleaning, so to speak, right?
Actually, so yeah, I guess the owner ref in this case, the owner reference was problematic for us because it was still a static pod and the controller was trying to muck with a static pod. But I guess
this is not a static pod.
State, right. Yeah, so I'll take another pass on it and take a look, but yeah.
Cool. Sounds like that should be on track then. I think sounds really good to me. So next up, what should we take? Matt, Bootstrap tokens, maybe?
Sure. I linked two open PRs. One of them is actually just approved, so it should be in the merge queue soon. One of them adds extra group field to the Bootstrap token secret. So right now with the Bootstrap token, when you authenticate with the Bootstrap token, you go into you authenticate as a user, that's system bootstrapper token ID, and a group that's called system bootstrappers. It's just fixed. This change makes it so that in addition to that group, you can also add yourself to extra groups, as long as all the extra groups are still prefixed with system bootstrappers. So this basically lets you have multiple bootstrapper groups. And as it is right now, this is sort of not that useful because there's nothing gated behind there's no roles or anything bound to those extra groups. But this would let you, for example, add a group for system bootstrapper masters, which is for bootstrapping new master nodes in a future HA kubeadm cluster. It would also let you tweak the CSR auto approver if you want to do the CSR auto approver and do something different to validate nodes in different groups. So you could have a group of nodes, like a pool of nodes that authenticated with one bootstrap token and ended up getting certificates signed with particular identities for that group, and another group that got a different set of certificates signed. I don't know, this is sort of just groundwork for future capabilities. The other flag is really boring. It's just renaming a flag on the API server to remove experimental.
Yeah. So looking at the bootstrap token features issue, let's see. Do we think so? The last and the third and last piece of this is probably splitting out helpers to client Go or whatever. But do we consider that GA functionality? And I mean, at this point in the cycle, it's all about risk management. So, and also I heard somewhere that the Kubernetes package, right? I think there will be a repo named Kubernetes package in the 1.9 timeframe or something. And I think it was Chow that mentioned that it might be useful there.
Yeah, to me, the client Go still feels like kind of a weird spot for these. It's nice to have. So the idea is that they should be in some smaller repo that's easier to depend on if you were writing a tool that needed to manage bootstrap tokens.
Yeah. So basically, it's like I think that plugin, or anyway, there was something. Yeah. I think that plugin and things in staging can't depend on the main repo. And also we have like E2E test that will be splitted out soon that depend on this same thing. And we can't have the helpers in kubeadm because it's kind of obvious. Anyone shouldn't depend on us from this side of Kubernetes. So yeah, we just like talked about client Go as because it's kind of we need a client for them, right? It's not a separate API type, but an object, but it's still a thing that should be manipulated.
Yeah, it's not technically a new API, separate API type, but it basically is an API type.
Yeah,
it just happens to be embedded in a secret. Which I'm guessing that was. I wasn't around for that. I'm guessing that was so that it ends up encrypted and treated as a secret, which makes sense. Yeah, okay. So I can still tackle this issue, and I can just move to client Go because makes about as much sense as any other currently available destination for that code.
Yeah.
I don't know. And so that feels, and that's sort of just a refactor. I don't know that that needs to block sort of bootstrap tokens to beta overall. I think it's a good refactor to do, but I don't know that it counts as a blocker.
I don't think so necessarily either. Tim, were you about to say something on it?
I was only going to make a joke. It's a double secret API.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessary for beta per se. It's more like get this in the same package and just
It does feel like, so that, I don't know if this has been discussed, but it would be cleaner in my mind if we did create an API type for Bootstrap token and somehow found a way to annotate it so that it got treated as secret, the same way that secrets are treated as secret. And then a lot of the commands to work with the token would just fit naturally into kube control and stuff.
They would be generated dynamically, all clients inform us, stuff like that.
Do we want to try and tackle that project instead?
Well, we did.
I don't think you could do it for 1.8.
No.
So there is now like so probably new since the last discussion of this. There is now like a flag that controls which API objects are encrypted in etcd. That has a default list that just has secret in it. I don't know how. I don't know. It would be a relatively big change to get in before next week. So.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, we proposed that in the early days of, like, this was a year ago or something like that, when we sketched out the initial design for Bootstrap tokens. We implemented it for real in 1.6 first, but anyway, we tried to make it a type, but got pushback from API Missionary and maybe auth as well. I don't recall exactly, but anyway, we went with this approach instead. Yeah, that's. But
long story short, I'll tackle that refactor today. Should be relative. So the code we want, just to be clear, the code we want to move over is basically all the constants about what the keys in the secret are. The little bit of validation code for validating group names. Potentially some other helpers extracted out for parsing the secret into a.
Yeah, so basically, I think we need two main things, or three. So the general just consent, all the consent. Then, actually, I'm not sure if those constants actually should be in Kubernetes.
Maybe instead of actually moving the constants over, what we ought to do is create a struct that represents the Bootstrap token, and then expose functions for serializing and deserializing that struct into a secret.
Yeah, exactly. So we need the constants in kind of one package. We need the Bootstrap token struct that can be converted from into a secret, and the kind of, well, if we do it well, so it's hard because it could be. I mean, there is this functionality where we could just treat it as a plain string, like just 23 chars, right? And that's one use case for the Bootstrap token, and then we have also this admin level secret type. So it might make sense to split those and have two different types of structs, for example, to like one for the simple case where we just hold 23 bytes, and one for the more complicated case where we actually want to marshal and unmarshal from secrets. So,
like one represents the type that the client has to authenticate with, the thing that you hand over. The other represents the secret that's persisted.
Exactly. Cool. Yeah, and then we'll see if it makes 1.8 or not. But anyway, it makes sense to push for, and we'll see. So that's one thing. Now Eric LGTM'd a change, by the way, for Bootstrap tokens, the configurable groups. Perfect. We have
There are some other 1.8 issues open for certificate rotation. It looks like they're assigned, but I don't know if I'd be happy to take a look at them if they need attention.
that. Who's assigned? Sorry.
I'd have to look again.
Okay. Yeah. We need to get kubelet client certs rotated in 1.8 enabled. That's going to be the. I'm not still sure if server certs are going to be there. They might or might not. But yeah. Then we've covered Aaron, just a quick update on the daemon set thing. Do we have everything we need there? I recall Diego talked something about like part of the contract with all the helper functions assumed that there was always one replica.
I believe he worked around it, but I think at this stage it's just having people take a look at the implementation and seeing if that's reasonable. Someone also was asking about a design doc, so I don't know if we need to go back in hindsight and do that. I mean, we can, it's not a big deal. But yeah, so I think if everyone can take a look at the implementation and if this is reasonable, I think everyone in SIG apps got pinged as well, and we can just kind of move forward on it.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull it down locally and test it out. I mean, upgrade should be a no-op in this case. Because we're relying on the controller to do the upgrading for us. So let's say we upgrade the API server first. Then the 1.8 API server will be started. It will become in the running state, and then it will the old one will get deleted. It should work.
That's an interesting coordination point, because you'll need to ensure that you've upgraded your API server with the old style, or not old style, but relying on this ability not existing. And then once it is available in 1.8, then move on to the next component and you can rely on it. Yeah, it'd be a little strange.
Yeah, so basically for 1.7 to 1.8, we're going to do static pod upgrades all the way. And then from 1.8 on, we'll be able to rely on this functionality. That sounds good to me. One corner case that I don't know if we should be worried about is, like, if let's say we upgraded the API server successfully, we upgraded the controller manager successfully, and we are trying with the new scheduler was added, and it didn't come up cleanly. Then the scheduler upgrade will be like rolled back automatically, right? But we'd still have to handle the case to like roll back all others, or if.
I don't think there's any automated rollback capacity. Like, you could roll it back, but the controller itself won't.
I thought it rolled back automatically. Like if you try a rolling upgrade and it doesn't succeed, so
I could be wrong. Yeah.
At least I hope so. Otherwise, we might have problems.
Well, I mean, I don't think it would proceed any further based on like your maximums and minimums available. But yeah, I mean, I could be totally wrong. It's been a while since I've looked at that stuff. But yeah, like, so the rollback of the rest of the update would be a process that you would kind of like, however kubeadm implements this, would have to decide.
Yeah. Yeah. So for static pods, it's kind of trivial because we just save the manifest in one place, the old manifest, and just rewrite them back to the old place if anything fails. So, but yeah.
Do daemon sets keep a copy of their prior state like deployments do?
Yeah. They have the history.
Okay.
So. Cool. And yeah, so I have a PR up for dry run if we move on to kubeadm upgrades. That's, well, Tim commented very reasonably about the configuration, centralized configuration object vs flags variables in the code.
It just seemed like you took a step backwards, right? Like the way it was before was actually kind of cleaner.
Yeah, so why I did it initially was I didn't want to muck with the configuration object too much, like in the different, I mean, first set it to one value, then unset it to when generating the manifest, and just thought that it might be better to split that. But the end state, when I looked at it afterwards, I agree with you.
Yeah, because it just looks like now you're passing the variables all over the place, and you had to muck all the signatures to pass in all the directories. So it just had a feel of like you took a step backwards from where you were. Right? So if you do just like a muck on the configuration struct, as part of the initialization routine that says like I'm a dry run, I'm going to muck all these variables, the output dirs, then I don't see why that wouldn't work properly.
Yeah, so we should, for 1.9, we should definitely, I mean, now we have the phases in place, which is great. The next step is probably wrapping the config in something actually useful, so we don't, as you said, have to do this variables that are runtime specific, but should not be persisted in the API, but still are really useful on runtime. We should probably wrap those in a runtime configuration object, which also has the serialized one. Yeah, I'll take a look and try to clean that up.
I don't know if we want to go this far, but we can debate on it. It's a good mental thought exercise. Is that this is a gripe, so get ready for it. Inside of the code, inside of Kubernetes, it's very much a document view style architecture instead of a model view controller. So the API structs and changes to those structs are directly represented into the code, and any changes or shifts in the API get percolated all throughout the entire code base, right? Rocking it circa, what year is it? I don't know, 1990s. People came up and said this is a bad idea because every time I change something, it percolates all the way through. So they indirected through controllers. So they had a model view controller architecture where the model is typically the API or whatever you have to interpolate. But this way, there's a middle layer. And that middle layer is your abstraction layer for your structs that you care about internally. And then there's always like some road to deserialization and mapping between the two. That type of idea in a very simplified fashion for kubeadm might be useful. That's a broader picture of hate that I have with regards to how some things are done inside of the system.
Yeah, I agree that that could be improved for sure. Yeah, I'll sorry.
I was just going to say this. It strikes me as an interesting idea. What would be the specific manifestation of that in kubeadm, Tim?
The configuration struct.
Right. Okay.
So if you wanted to have the view is a serialized representation, and you'd have some, your configuration structures is the piece that we're talking about would be mucked as part of the state of the variables, and you don't necessarily want to persist that out or whatever, right?
Cool.
Yeah, I'll update that in an hour or so. Then, did you have a time to look at the, let me see what it is, the CLI parts of kubeadm upgrade, like mock parts?
I'm in the middle of reviewing 50872.
Yep, that's the one. Cool. I hope we can try to get that in today. There will be a lot of, I mean, still the main functionality is kind of heavier than than the CLI parts. So there will be some for sure some discussion there later. But I've rebased the full PR and it's now like chained cleanly with this one. So once this CLI PR is merged, it will just, I mean, you can already review the implementation code cleanly in a separate commit in the main PR. So I should probably split the unit tests out there for better reviewability, because I mean there's a lot of unit testing for the I don't, maybe not more than the code actually, but it's close. So yeah, thanks for doing that. I think we're in a pretty good shape overall. But yeah, please check out like the milestone, 1.8 milestone in Kubernetes kubeadm.
What is the feature freeze date now?
Thursday, I think.
Next week or this week?
Next week.
Okay.
Don't do that to us. Yeah, so I put a list of PRs to watch in the notes for the next meeting next Tuesday, because while Lucas is away, I'm going to try and keep a handle on what everything is that needs to land. I'm sure everyone else is going to do that as well, but maybe we can aggregate, maybe we can maintain that list together. Or you might argue that the list should be the repo, like in GitHub, the issues and the milestone. But I think, at least for me, it's useful to just keep a list in the notes for this last push.
So I don't exactly know how hard we want to be with strict requirements on this feature freeze, because we have like things that are mid-flight. So it's like, typically they have like, it's got to be LGTM'd before the feature freeze date, but we have like half the code in, can't like not get the other half in, right? So
well, if we get the CLI in first, then we can just argue that the implementation's a bug fix.
Yeah, there you
go. Well, yeah. So let me know, Tim, if I should split up the remaining parts of the upgrade implementation. I think it passes pretty cleanly. Like now, when there's no CLI distraction, there's maybe 7 or 8 files, and I've tried to make them like 100 lines each or so, each file doing its own thing, and that way make it as reviewable as possible. I'm not sure if like actually splitting it technically in a more PRs make it easier for us.
I'll take a look today and give you feedback, hopefully by the end of the day. That's my primary thing I'm working on right now. So it's just to catch up on the review backlog. So.
Yeah, thank you.
Great.
So yeah, just for information to others, we have a cloud provider refactoring working group kind of thing meeting in 1 minute now. So let me see if I should close this one to get the recording for us meeting. Or
yeah, you should close it and kick everyone out, and then everyone can join back in so that the meetings are separate MP4 files. Otherwise,
yeah.
you can split them.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to jump. Cheers. Bye.
Okay. So yeah, we've had the kubeadm like 1.8 implementation working group meeting so far this hour, and to get the recording of that one, I'm gonna stop this meeting temporarily, join in some seconds, and it will start making the video of the previous one while I'm recording this meeting, if that's okay with everyone.
Great.
Yep.
Sounds good.